Hello everybody. I really didn't want to make a video on this topic anymore because I thought I kinda just said it and did it a few months back when there was a bunch of discourse around the Angels of Delusion. And at that time, for those not in the know, I made a video about why lolicon is not pedophilia and the dangers of thinking this way because you can apply it and make a lot more real life people seem problematic by liking any fictional character who has some serious issues with them, and as well as the weirdness in supporting a company known for being lolicons and having lolicons and advertising the game, advertising sponsorships like LD Shop for your viewers to spend money for them. It just doesn't make sense. Clearly, you don't give a fuck enough about people you consider real pedophiles, right? However, unfortunately, it seems I am being accused of this same bullshit again. Yesterday, I had people come into my first stream that I did in a while talking about Zulza said something about you. I said, I don't give a shit, just move on. I want to talk about the game, and we moved on. However, again, on today's stream, the same thing happened. So I finally decided to check what is it that my chat keeps bothering me about after I ended the stream. And it's a lolicon equals pedophilia thing. Basically, I think it's like a counter video on my old one I made, right? And I just want to say this right now. Yes, I'm a lolicon. Yes, I'm a Shotacon. I don't only like lollies though. Or actually no, I'm not a con. I just like certain lollies. I like certain Shotas. I like certain buff characters. I like certain tall women. I like certain medium-sized women and men. I don't care. I don't treat anime characters as real-life human beings in the slightest. So I truthfully just do not care, right? If you maybe have more issues and you consider anime characters and fictional characters as real people, well, maybe then I can maybe understand your issue, but please stop projecting your bullshit onto me, right? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and why I don't think lolicon equals pedophilia, right? And also, kinda the stupidness in even supporting Zulza in these accusations to begin with. But first, I'll start off with the shooting game argument. Most of you guys would know it. About a decade ago, pre-COVID, even to be honest, the mid-2010s, it was pretty widely accepted that if you allow your kid to play like a shooting game or even just show him someone else playing a shooting game at a young age, it vastly increases their chances of becoming a shooter or a school shooter in the future. And even my parents fell for this propaganda. I was not allowed to play a shooting game until my mid-teens, and I was not allowed to play a realistic shooting game like COD until much older. Now, luckily, my mother ended up realizing at some point, because I was playing these shooting games on the low behind her back, that, oh, this guy's been playing this shit already for years. There's absolutely nothing wrong with him. So I'm just going to ignore that shit, and I just don't believe in that anymore, right? W-Mob. And luckily, I was finally able to play just shooting games normally in my mid-teens and further. However, a lot of people weren't allowed. A lot of people had to deal with that bullshit, which was then proven in the future to not be true. It was already proven to begin with to not be true with research, but a bunch of people who wanted to virtue signal and seem like incredibly morally righteous people in comparison to the rest, they just kept lying. They kept spreading the propaganda, so it lasted much longer than it should have, right? The same thing applies to this lolicon equals pedophilia argument. Lollies just do not look like real human beings at all in anime. Their proportions are way off, the way they act, they're way off, and it makes sense because they literally are not real. And in a lot of anime, things are quite over-exaggerative, so they do not exactly act like real people, usually ever, right? It's very rare of a thing to happen. However, there's also people who have differing levels of what they consider lolly or what they consider Shota. In Zulza's case, Zulza has already come to me and called me a lolicon before for liking Sparkle. So this means that Zulza, the one who is trying to call me out here, I'm assuming, is saying if you like Sparkle, you're a pedophile. If you like Ceredra, you're a pedophile. If you like Fushuan, you're a pedophile. If you like any of those characters, you're a pedophile, because she considers that Lolly and she considers Lolicons pedophiles, right? The same thing applies to Venti. Venti is the most popular character in the entire Genshin with the most R34. He definitely passes off as a Shota, so anybody who has ever gooned to Venti, which is quite a lot of the Genshin fan base apparently, with how popular he is, you are a pedophile. And clearly, most people would disagree. However, this goes on and on. If you like Tatsumaki, you're a pedophile. If you like Rukia, you're a pedophile. If you like Capella from Re:Zero, you're a pedophile. It goes on infinitely. And clearly, most people who like these characters, probably 99.99%, are not real pedophiles. They just like gooning to this anime character that they might have connected to some extent. They like their design, they like their personality, they like the fact that they're the main focus of the story, so they know them a lot more in comparison to the rest. There's a bunch of different reasons why people grow attraction to certain characters in these animes. However, also, even if you were to take this to the extremes that people like, of, oh, if you actually goon and like this fictional character, you clearly like everything about them, and that means you imagine them as real children, I'm assuming is the argument. Then what happens when you start including this with most anime characters, even if they're adults, but they have severe personality trait issues, right? A main example of this is Sukuna from JJK. Sukuna spends a majority of the series in JJK in Yuji, who is a vessel for him. However, Sukuna is definitely one of the most thirsted for characters in the entirety of JJK, even though he's in the body of a 15-year-old. But technically, Sukuna is 1k plus years old. He clearly shows it, clearly acts like it, but you'd still be considered a pedophile by this logic, right? Which is why it's stupid. And quite often, characters in anime do not make sense. For example, you have JoJo's Bizarre characters who are supposedly 15 or 16, meaning if you like them, you're a pedophile, who are some of the most buff, tall, built, and intelligent characters in the entire series, which doesn't make fucking sense, but that's kind of the point. It's fictional, it's an anime, it's not real, it's not supposed to actually reflect real life human beings, so nobody actually cares if you goon to some of these JoJo's characters who look like adults, right? And then the same way goes other ways. Makima. You can't goon to Makima. That's problematic. You can't goon to any evil woman character. Esdeath from Akame ga Kill. That's bad because clearly they are very bad. They like genocide. They've killed. They've done wars. They're disgusting, right? But clearly, if you like this part of a fictional character, it means it translates to real life. It's just stupid, right? It's just stupid. Get over it. Move on. I just don't understand, man. Like, stop throwing around the word pedophile and watering it down for real victims. People don't even take pedophile as a serious word anymore most of the time on social media, because 90% of the time it's just associated with someone else who the person accusing them of being a pedophile, they just don't like them, right? Like, it's almost never used in the actual context that it's supposed to be used in. People just throw this shit around for things that they don't like. And this is why this entire thing is just fucking stupid. I don't care. I'm going to keep gooning to Tatsumaki. I'm going to keep gooning to Kana. I'm going to keep gooning to, what's it called? Wendy from Fairy Tail. I don't care, right? It's not going to make me a pedophile. I'm not going to go out there and touch kids. In fact, I hate kids. I absolutely despise kids in real life. They're way too fucking energetic, annoying, immature, and unintelligent. I have nothing to do with them, and I hope I never have anything to do with them. In fact, I'm literally staying out of real relationships so that I don't have to deal with that shit, right? But people will get on here and act like I'm a pet. Like, do you understand just how dehumanizing it is? How I feel when people throw around such a serious term for me liking like Tatsumaki or Akibi or Alia from Roshidere. Do you not understand the fucking what value there is to the word pedophile? Do you not understand how much that one word holds in the way you interpret another human being. I have been accused of doing something to a woman before in my life. No, it's not pedophilia related. However, it's supposedly sexual assault related. And I had to deal with my family looking at me as if I was subhuman, treating me as if I was a disgusting, flaw in the house that I lived in when I was going to high school, right? And my stepfather took advantage of this to try and get me to kick me out of the house because he always hated my guts, and he'd abuse me every day. Every day when I went to school and I woke up 1 hour early, he'd spend 45 minutes kicking me around when I was trying to have breakfast and mentally, verbally insulting me. I had to deal with that for years until he finally left, and until finally that person who accused me of doing that to them finally came out and admitted that I didn't do anything to them and that they lied, right? I know the severity of being falsely accused of something incredibly serious when it is not true. And that is why I take things like this seriously and why I'm responding to this to begin with. In fact, I have a very close family member who has been taken advantage of by a pedophile, and she's aware that I like lollies and that I like shotas, and she doesn't give a fuck, right? Genuinely. She doesn't care. She didn't say, oh no, this is problematic. Oh no, but what about my trauma? She didn't try to self-insert herself at all. She just said, oh, whatever, right? I don't really care, I'm going to keep doing my own thing. You keep doing your own thing. We keep talking normally. We still talk actively. She's amazing, right? Stop throwing around the word and watering down the word pedophile to use against people you don't like because you genuinely don't want to spend 5 minutes at all looking into real research behind this topic, or thinking about how the way you think can bleed into different ways of making every single human being on this planet problematic for liking certain or gooning to certain fictional characters, even if they aren't lolly or even if they aren't shota. Leave me the fuck alone. I'm tired of this bullshit. I did nothing to provoke you. I just leave me the fuck alone. Hope you all have a great day. Hope you all have a great night. Peace out.